Hello? Three designers. Hello, I'm Natasha. Well, I'm going to tell a little bit of story about where I'm from and how my background and my roots influenced my work. So this is me when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I was always a kind of a naughty child, a kind of a tomboy. What I really wanted to be when I was a child was an astronaut. I was obsessed about space, and I still am. I have a huge board on Pinterest that's all about space. So I told my mom, I said, Mom, I want to be an astronaut. My mom said, sorry, my child, you have to go to America or Russia in order to be an astronaut. And I was very depressed when I heard that. Why is that? Because I was trapped in this little island called Taiwan. I was born and raised in Taiwan. It's in the Southeast Asia. My parents are both from China. My mom's from Shanghai, my dad is from Hunan, and they met in Taiwan, and they had me and my brother. And Taiwan is relatively a small island with a very large mountain, as you can see in this picture, kind of in the middle. So the population is mostly concentrated on the west side of Taiwan. As you can see, the yellow kind of area, that's where people are. And I was born and grew up in this city called Taipei. It's the capital of Taiwan on the north. And this is a kind of snapshot of Taipei. It's an incredibly dense city, from the architecture to the people to the urbanscape. So we have a kind of very different sense about proximity and privacy, because growing up in a kind of very dense space, you're just used to people. But at the same time, I really hated where I grew up. I really hated Taipei throughout my whole life, until probably now, that I have a little distance and perspective. I always feel that the city is like a dump, For example, this is sort of like the streetscape in Taiwan. So, this is not uncommon in Asia. If you go to Korea, Hong Kong, Japan, Taiwan, this is kind of very typical landscape. I don't know why, we just have shitloads of signs on the street. In a way, it's really beautiful, because now that I'm a designer, I can actually appreciate it. All the incredible, very artistic, expressive typography. But then, when I was a child, I just really hated it. I thought everything just looked so incredibly ugly. So the language spoken in Taiwan is Mandarin, Chinese, and as some of you may know, that Taiwan and China has this really complicated history and relationship, right? So what's interesting about Chinese is that the language is that it's a very large pictogram system. We have 100,000 characters. So it's not like any Roman language, The pictures are actually, the pictograms are literally drawings of things and objects, and then these pictures can be combined and recombined to make other characters. So out of 100,000 characters, 8,000 are used every day. So, I'm quite proud that, we actually have pretty good memory to actually memorize all these characters. And the other cool thing about Chinese is that I think all the languages in the world have a very specific direction, meaning that you spell it out, horizontally, left to right. What's really cool about Chinese is that you can do it vertically, you can do it from right to left, you can do it from left to right, you can do it horizontally as well. So this is an ad, actually, that I took a picture of a couple weeks ago when I traveled to Taiwan for a project. I saw this in the newspaper. I was just really amazed by its beauty. And again, now that I'm looking at it as an adult, I have a distance with it, and I begin to appreciate its beauty. But when I was a kid, this was purely ugly to me. And going back to the kind of the language system of Chinese, In a way, it's a huge Lego system. Basically, you have these bits and parts, right? They're already there. And then it's really through recombining these bits and pieces that you make new meaning. For example, you can construct something that's incredibly simple, or it can be something relatively complex. So the range is really infinite, and that's what's really cool about the language. And I began to become more and more aware about how this language system, ultimately it's a logic, and how it actually influences the way that I think and the way that I work as a designer. So as an example, like I said, the characters are basically pictograms. So this is a pictogram of a sun, and this is what the character looks like. This is, what is it? Can you tell? What is it? It's a moon, and this is what a character looks like. But then when you combine the sun and the moon, it's basically a cycle, right? It means tomorrow. Another example, so this is the character, people or person. We don't have plural or singular in our language. It's basically a profile of a person. And by the way, I didn't come up with this system, you know. I didn't come up with a way of telling this story. This is basically how the language is taught in elementary schools. And then when a person extends his arms, this character means big. So when you combine big and person, it means adult, a big person. And this is the character for fire. As you can see, it literally looks like fire burning. So when you put big and fire together, it means big fire. But if you flip the order of fire and big, so fire gets big, it means angry. And so that's a kind of, you know, the beauty of Chinese is that it's incredibly contextual, and then the meaning is really created through just recombining the same thing in different ways. So fast forward, growing up in Taiwan, I left Taiwan when I was 22, so I was already pretty old. I went straight to New York to go to school, and after that I started working there in 2002. I worked at several studios there in New York. This was one of the projects that I did when I worked at 2x4. It was an exhibition for Nike in Beijing. And at that time, in the New York office, I was the only person who's native Chinese speaker. So I just very naturally, I ended up doing projects that involved Chinese, you know, setting up the type. And the funny thing is that my entire knowledge about graphic design was actually taught and learned here in America. So I really didn't learn anything about Chinese typography until I started working, and I started, you know, like teaching myself a little bit about Chinese typography through working. And there are several like funny accidents happen after that, which I will talk about through one project. And then we did some interesting projects in Asia as well. For example, like this animated facade for Chanel Hong Kong. And then in 2010, after working for several years, I started to, you know, I started to establish my own practice. And it wasn't really a practice. It was basically me and 2 interns working, you know, in a small rented space shared with 2 other architects. And I named my studio Engine Works. Engine is my name, Natasha Jin Works, because it works, you know. But Engine also sounded like engine, and I really, really liked that. So while I was doing my own practice, I did a lot of small identity projects. A lot of them were either low pay or pro bono. For example, these were posters for MIT architecture, and then we started working with them recently again. These are posters for a fashion designer, Tess Giberson, and I've been working with her over, you know, the past four years or so since I started doing my own practice. And my practice only lasted for about a year and a half because 3 months after I opened up my own shop, I was invited by Pentagram to become a partner, and then it took us a year to a lot of negotiation, very intense negotiation, in order to make the deal happen. Just kidding. I only operated my practice for a year and a half before I joined Pentagram. It was like a really huge change, scale-wise as well as diversity of the project. This was one of the other projects that I did when I was running my own practice, facade system for Kate Spade. And this project actually never got realized, and I had plenty of those. But what's kind of really cool is that, you know, a lot of those ideas at that time now can kind of be either repurposed or recycled or, you know, reiterated so that we can actually like test them in the projects that we have right now. And in 2012, I happily became a partner at Pentagram.